Guys, I guess we're beginning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Wednesday, October 1st, 2025 informal meeting of the Board of Education. This is an information meeting only. We do not take any votes. Today, let me be assured that we have posted this. It has been posted. We have a few presentations today, and as soon as I get this, we're not doing it. Okay, our board meeting minute today is, board member minute today is, we have a full schedule, so we're not going to do one. Okay. All right, our first presentation is reading on grade level. Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present on our school year 2025 third grade reading on grade level performance. This is aligned with Strategic Priority 1, Student Growth and Achievement for Choice-Filled Futures. Specifically, we're going to look at Performance Objective B, Advancing Proficiency in Literacy and Numeracy through high-quality instruction and support for diverse learners. And the KPI of focus is increasing Lexile performance as measured by the GMAS reading on grade level with a focus on third grade. One of the things that we need to understand in context of this presentation is the importance of reading on grade level by the end of third grade. Third grade is a critical time in a student's education, which marks the transition from learning to read to reading to learn. Reading proficiency by the end of third grade is a key indicator of a child's educational development, as literacy skills are essential for learning across all subjects. In fact, based upon studies of curricula across K-12, as well as postgraduate endeavors such as college, what we see is that over 85% of curricula are taught by reading. Reading proficiency is connected to positive life outcomes and increased opportunities. Students who do not exhibit reading proficiency by the end of third grade have an increased likelihood of dropping out of high school. In fact, they're 4 times more likely than their peers to do so, and are more likely to experience long-term behavioral and mental health issues. For the assessment of reading on grade level, we look to the Georgia Milestones English Language Arts Assessment. Specifically, we focus on the reading and vocabulary domain. The ELA score overall comprises both reading and vocabulary and writing and language, but for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to take out those items that are associated with computing what is known as the GMAS Reading Status Indicator, and that is based on just the subset or domain that has to do with reading and vocabulary. The GMAS Reading Status Indicator produces what is known or is based upon a Lexile score. The Lexile score measures the reading ability based on achievement within that domain. So it's assessed directly within the GMAS, and we receive an individual Lexile score for each of our students. The Lexile stretch bands reflect grade level text complexity and measure students' reading ability. Stretch bands are so denoted because they reflect the literacy skills associated with being prepared for college and career. Thus, they are an index of college and career readiness. For third grade, the range is in fact the largest of all of the Lexile bands, and it spans 520 to 820 Lexile. The reading status on GMAS is presented as either grade level or above or below grade level based upon scoring within the grade appropriate band. So a student in third grade who scores at 720 would be grade level above. A student in third grade who scores a 518 Lexile would in fact fall in below grade level. So please understand that every single point counts, and 1 or 2 points that miss that lower bound puts the child automatically in that below grade level performance. Looking at the district's overall performance for third grade, what we see is that in school year 2025, 53% of our students hit the mark and were noted as grade level or above. This is a 5% decline as compared to school year 2024. And in the graph that is presented to the right, what you see is our baseline, which was established in 2024, which was 58%. Our performance for last year, 2025, 53%. And our ultimate target based upon our strategic plan KPI for next year, which is 65%. Our target for this year was 61%, and thus we fell 8 percentage points of the target that was established. When we look at our performance in comparison to the state overall, as well as a comparable group of districts, what we see is that the district fell below both the state and the comparison group in school year 2025. When we look at performance by student group, what we typically have termed in the past as subgroup performance, we see quite a bit of variability. So you can see that we have some students who are performing above that overall 53%. So our Asian students, multiracial, white students, and female students all scored above our average of 53%, whereas the others fell below. Any questions?
Well, if we get started, where we going?
Let's get to the end. Yeah, good
All
call,
right.
Connie. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Let's keep ourselves quiet.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we wanted to see, though, is as this is simply a snapshot performance of students in third grade in 2025, we wanted to see what growth looks like. So we did a look back to school year 2023 and third graders in school year 2023. And we matched their performance in school year 2024 when they were in fourth grade. And then we matched their performance yet again to last year when they were in fifth grade. What we wanted to see is whether growth is occurring as we would anticipate. So this is a matched cohort. There were 2,184 students who were with us across that period of time and had scores on the GMAS reading and vocabulary domain, yielding that Lexile score. And what we see is from school year 2023 to 25, there was marked growth with those children last year in grade 5 performing, 63% of them performing at grade level or above. And what we saw is a steady increase in their average median Lexile score. So they went from an average of 565 in grade 3 in school year 2023 to 895 median in 2025. And that concludes the data portion of the presentation. And now that I turn the floor over to Mr. Butler to discuss our literacy strategies for this year.
Okay. would you guys like to do questions now, or do you want to wait until?
I want to wait and see what their strategies are before we start.
Okay.
Oh, that's me. How do you feel? Yes, keep on.
Wonderful. All right. Okay. Hello, Mr. Butler.
All righty, great morning. My apologies, my voice is leaving me, so I'll do my very best to project this morning. So before we get into the strategies, I just want to share that a lot of what you'll hear this morning, we shared with you last week at our board retreat. And so what we'll do is we'll just elevate some of the high priority strategies and offer some additional details and then open the floor for some conversations. But before we do all of this, and I may be taking some of the thunder from the superintendent later on today, but just want to celebrate Literacy Week. On yesterday, our schools had their literacy nights. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Windsor Forest Elementary School and Principal Dr. Gilbert Collins. I had a phenomenal time there. The turnout was incredible with the students and family. I had a chance to participate as dad, so it was a great time. And so shout out to Windsor Forest Elementary School and all of our schools for engaging our families. It is that kind of community connection that fuels our district's literacy efforts. You've had an opportunity to take a look at our universal system for literacy, and so I won't spend time there, but just wanted to kind of elevate very quickly what we've talked about before relative to our challenges as well as our opportunities. Of course, with every initiative, we have those, and what we want to do is scale what works. We'll also highlight one of the things that you may have heard about in one of our previous conversations, which is a pilot around Ignite, which is that high dosage tutoring. So we'll share just a little bit of information around that. But what's important for us is that we're providing the right professional learning for our staff, protecting instructional time, and ensuring every student has the right access to resources. And so that really is what we want to make sure that we elevate as part of our strategy this year. Again, as we discussed, and you had a chance to hear directly from Ms. Goldman, our Literacy Effectiveness Officer, many of these strategies are already underway. And you'll see that our district strategies are anchored in evidence-based practices, keeping the literacy block really sacred and protecting that time, prioritizing writing instruction. And so doing that with the level of intentionality. There's a lot of work happening at our K-8 schools, and our elementary schools around that. One of the pieces that is really important, as we've shared at our last week, is we have new ELA standards. And so part of our work is making sure that we are prioritizing support in that bridge to practice of the science of reading training with our new ELA standards and utilizing the resource to help improve instructional practice and student learning experiences in the classroom. Just share with you the other piece to that. Our second key strategy focuses on people and their capacity. And so while you see professional development here, it is not just in the traditional professional development context, but consistency and alignment of our instructional routines and practices are important. You heard last week from Dr. Barnes around our core action walks and the importance of that support for our schools, our teachers, and our leaders, and being able to sort of calibrate around what is good practice and being able to provide targeted support to schools and to classrooms to help improve practice. As I mentioned just a moment ago, we've had some conversation around the high dosage tutoring pilot with Ignite Reading. So that is being launched. It began this week in 4 of our schools, Gadsden, Haven, Hodge, and Butler, and about 25 second and third grade students at each school that have performed in the lowest percentile as measured by our MIRA screener and assessment are receiving that 15 minutes of individualized foundational support and tutoring around those foundational literacy skills. And really, this is the kind of intentional support that will help close some of the gaps that you saw in the data presentation from Dr. May earlier. So, as we often like to do, we like to help make sense of all of this from a real experience that helps illustrate the impact of these strategies in action. And so I'd like to introduce you to Jack. Jack is the son of one of our district's academic coaches. And in kindergarten and first grade, Jack struggled. Reading fell out of reach, and progress was slow. He was on the cusp of qualifying for early intervention services. By first grade, his data told a sobering story. He was at 0.0 on a Mirrors assessment at the beginning of the year. I will pause there because I want you to think about what that data point means for this particular student, and we'll invite you to ask some questions around that in just a moment. But then something shifted. His teacher, who is trained in science of reading, letters, right, leaned into those practices and began to make that bridge to practice. And overwhelmed at first, right, she nevertheless committed to implementing small group foundational supports with integrity and fidelity, and we begin to see Jack respond to that kind of support and that instructional practice. So in second grade, with another teacher who was all in on letters, we saw the momentum continue. She used as a resource our core curriculum, HMH into reading materials, leveraged the Amira tool and the tutor, and we saw Jack's progress accelerate. By the end of third grade, Jack's Amira data showed a remarkable leap. 4.56, I think I'm supposed to, there we go. I got to stay, share. 4.56 grade equivalency, and his Lexile score on GMAS was and you saw this just a moment ago. I'm curious to know if you're taking a look at your chart, and an 830, right? When he entered fourth grade this fall, his MAP reading percentile was an 82% percentile. So Jack's story is not just about one student. It's really a story of the James, the Marias, the Maliks, right? Who are equipped with the right tools and training, and we believe that it's this kind of story. And again, these things don't happen immediately. And so just wanted to illustrate how these strategies work in concert with each other to support our students in their learning experience. So I'm going to pause there. I think this is a time where we open the floor for some questions, and I'll invite Dr. May back up as well to answer any.
Okay. Ms. Hall, Mrs. Hall, Ms. Grabowski, Dr. Howard Hall, everybody, okay.
You talk the longest.
Yes.
Trouble.
And I'm going to be brief because I said most of what I needed to say last week.
Time, everybody.
But I just wonder about how much joy our kids feel in these reading classrooms. When I recall kindergarten, we had lots of time to express ourselves and show what we were learning other than formal assessments. We could stand, we would recite nursery rhymes. We would get up with a partner and talk about what our favorite food was. It sounds to me like we had a much more interactive experience than just the teacher and the computer teaching us and teaching us and teaching us. We had a chance for more expression. So I'm just wondering, in terms of your strategies, is there a time for a kindergarten child to give an oral report on something? Is there time for a first grade child to show that she knows Mary Had a Little Lamb. What are the opportunities we give them other than putting them in front of that computer? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I think we would reach a lot of those kids. We talk about when we retain them, then we'll start doing individual reading plans. Well, maybe we could do some individual reading plans preventively, ahead, once we see that they're at first grade and they're not keeping up. But I'm hoping during this literacy week that I go in some classrooms and actually see some joy in the kids learning to read and speak and having a chance to have fun with their reading and not just a dry, say the word, say it fast, and inspire some joy. So I'm done, Dr. Freeman.
I'm not sure if I'm expected to respond to that, but
It's more, Mr. Butler, it's more, again, the experience and the breadth and width of our teachers' ease
sure.
with teaching. That I guess that's what I'm always concerned about.
And I think one of the things that we want to do, which is part of why we shared the story of Jack, I think it's important for us, even in this setting, although we're sharing all of the strategies that seem to be a heavy lift, is to really elevate the student experience and the student story and share those moments of joy. I certainly had an opportunity to see that, although it was literacy night, the engagement of our students in a meaningful way, in a joyous way. And so I think those are the things that are important for us to share with you, because that is a part of the support and training that we're providing to teachers. Specifically, I know we're using a lot of the jargon here around instructional routines and practices, but that's a part of it, right? So when we talk about teachers using specific techniques and we talk about the turn and talks, and those are the opportunities for students to really be engaged in those joyful learning experiences, much like what you shared. So.
Ms. Grabowski?
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I would think, Ms. Hall, I think many of the younger grade teachers that I've met, like, their classrooms are filled with joy, and I think they want to be joyful too, so hopefully that is transformed, coming into the classroom. On the data side, the Amira score, that number represents where they are on a grade level, is that correct? Is that what that number means out of Amira in your story of Jack?
Yes.
Okay. Does Amira measure Lexile at all, or are they too young to have a Lexile score? I'm seeing a yes.
So Amira does provide a Lexile score as well. It's
Okay.
not the standard score that's reported for Amira. That's the ARM score,
Okay.
Which is a norm reference score that would be a grade level approximation.
Okay. So I really like the cohort analysis in the data, because I think it's really helpful to understand how the students are trajectory. Did you look kind of retroactively at how our second graders were scoring on a Lexile that might have been an indicator that we were coming in might anticipate a little bit lower scores this year?
So third grade is the first grade level that's assessed with GMAS.
Right.
As such, we had to use the same exact indicator in a matched cohort. We haven't, we could do correlations with their Amira performance in second grade. That has not been done just because they're two separate assessments.
Yeah. Well, and I guess all that is also leading into the information we received at our retreat through the literacy plan presentation. We saw really great numbers coming out of our K-2 students this year. And we had a baseline last year of 49% that may have fed into the lower numbers this year. But looking forward, we are at 68% in our K-2 cohort. So hopefully that will help us to make up some of the gap that we're seeing in this year's GMAS scores. Is that a?
Yes, we continue to see gains, and in fact, that report has just recently been completed, and I'm sure will be shared with you soon.
Okay, well, I just think that's really exciting to see, even though I think some people are like, oh, why, we're doing all this literacy stuff and our GMAS numbers are lower, but in fact, we're seeing great positive trends in our students, because we talked about also at our retreat that our so much pressure is put on our third grade teachers that's really unfair, because it really is that pathway that our students are taking to get to that point. So excited to see where that leads us. And then my last question is, in the writing instruction piece under the literacy strategies, so I'll wait for Mr. Butler. In the writing strategies piece, when they are doing that writing instruction, are they doing that manually or on a computer? Because there's science that says doing it manually helps the students retain that more effectively. So curious about or doing it on paper versus on a computer.
Yeah, so it's a blended approach. And of course, at some of our early grades, I know we're talking about our K-5 or our K-3, but a lot of that is happening initially, pen to paper. But as we know, in terms of the actual assessment, definitely that's going to be computer-based.
Yeah, I certainly understand the assessment, but glad to hear we're doing both, and hope that we will continue that trend. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to start with Dr. Howard Hall and work our way down.
Good morning, and thank you for your presentation. We all are familiar with SMART goals, but I don't really hear that acronym anymore. And for those that may not be familiar with it, are the strategies specific? Are they measurable? Are they achievable? Are they relevant? And are they time-based? I know we have so many different acronyms, but I don't want us to lose focus of SMART goals. Also, a concern that I have is the intensity of K through second grade. Because as Ms. Grabowski mentioned, we put so much pressure on third grade. The presentation focused on third grade reading scores, but we need more focus and robust fundamental foundations for K through second grade. Because if we're just passing them along and they enroll and they enter into third grade on a first grade level, that's too much to ask for the third grade teachers. We're asking for a miracle. Especially when the state law says that a child doesn't have to enroll until they're 6 years old. And I have a question regarding Amira. We hear a lot about her, and I'm quite sure she's been successful, but however, for children who cannot read at all, how does Amira help those children when they must know sounds and they must know words in order to get a response from Amira?
We'll have Ms. Goldman come up to discuss Amira.
Good morning. Amira takes students through all kinds of foundational literacy skill exercises, so they're not just reading passages to her. They do exercises around phonemic awareness, letter naming, and phonics skill building. So they do exercises that hone in on sounds, hone in on words, hone in on sentences, and then also read passages. So, and she also corrects them in real time or provides them with instructional support in real time. So if a student is focusing on specific sounds, if the student makes a mistake, she will correct the student in real time and provide instruction around that. So the student doesn't have to be able to completely read in order to interact with her.
And just one quick thing too, we had a discussion on, we had a panel on Monday talking about AI. Mm-hmm. And I based on my experience with working with small children recently, they're not getting enough pen and paper practice. And with AI being as popular as it is when it comes to being creative in writing, Amira doesn't provide those skills. iReady doesn't provide those skills. Mm-hmm. We have abandoned assigning a penmanship grade.
I 100% agree with you.
So my question is, what can you all do to incorporate that into as one of these strategies, as journaling, handwriting? Because, you know, they develop those fine motor skills when they write in form letters. So it's like a repeat of learning the sounds when you write the word, when you color the picture of or draw a picture of your word, things like that. My concern is that they're not developing those fine motor skills in pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, because they are so focused on the computer.
And I apologize for interrupting. When I say that I 100% agree with you, I agree with you that we cannot just put our students in front of AI and expect the computer to teach the students. And to Dr. Butler's point earlier, there is a balance between handwritten instruction and computer instruction, recognizing that important pathways are built when our students are holding that pencil to the paper and the neural pathways that are created and the learning that happens just from that experience. Handwriting is an incredibly important part of the HMH curriculum and the curricular materials that students are working with in the lower grades. And so I do want to reassure you that those activities are happening in the classroom and we are not relying 100% on an AI program like Amira or any computer programs to teach our students. They are most definitely working paper to pencil, or pencil to paper, and also working, with books in hand. So.
To emphasize what drives that is our ELA standards as well. So I know she referenced the use of HMH, but what drives that are our standards in terms of the handwriting. So
Just quickly, I won't be long. Our teachers are on the battlefield. They're front line. And with everything coming at them, Ms. Hall referenced the joy of learning, but I hope we're not taking away the joy of teaching. And that's my concern.
Mrs. Campbell.
So I am thrilled to speak to this actually because I got the opportunity to attend, since I guess maybe because I asked the question about what do we mean by standards at the retreat, is that Lexile? Is it more complex than that? It is so much more complex than that. But I will tell you, I went to Garden City Elementary. Not only was it almost 4 hours, the teachers and Mrs. Barton, who invited me, who taught the class, were so engaged and so eager to get on board with the standards that you would have thought it wasn't like the state was saying, okay, we got to increase rigor in these new exciting ways. It was knowing that our GMAT scores will probably be negatively affected at first because it is a big difference, but it's a good change. And Ms. Barton even explained that, and the teachers were like, where do we integrate this? Do we do it in the writing piece? Do we do it in more small groups? I mean, it was so good for me to sit and hear how much they already knew about the science of reading, as well as how excited they were to best implement the changes coming out, which are many. And even Mr. Bird, the principal, was like shouting out answers. Like he knew all the things that you were supposed to know about science of reading. But penmanship being one of the things that's actually one of the ELA standards now, and cursive. So we're going to get cursive back. But it won't be tested at first, it seems. But Mrs. Barton went in. I know we had a question, too, about HMH at the retreat. It caused some of us a little bit of angst. But I will tell you that she seamlessly went through the HMH curriculum. It seems like a worthy investment. It gives teachers the ability to cater lesson plans and even do quick, lesson plans for subs if they're going to be out so they stay on track. I mean, it was an amazing experience to get to sit there and not even just to hear about the new standards, which are many, and, I can detail those for you guys in an email, but it was more just the relief of seeing that the teachers were not deflated by this information. They were excited and wanted to know how to best incorporate it so that they could teach students better. And I applaud your efforts because it's going very well, obviously. Better than it looks like in the numbers. I'm very hopeful. So that will speak to what Ms. Hall was worried about with the joy. I think the joy is there. She went over writability as well, Mrs. Barton. How to incorporate it, where some of the downfalls may be still, I shouldn't say downfalls, shortcomings that they're working through with writability. She made sure the teachers knew what to use and when, where standards are, and how a standard may be third grade in Georgia, but a different standard in another state, but how to immediately access it with this really cool AI tool that's, practically, idiot-proof. You can just type something in, this is the standard, get it for your class based on the age that Georgia stipulates it needs to be in the grade. to the SMART goals, I did have a question. The KPIs that we were talking about using up here, just so I remember, student growth percentile report, the 2 KPIs, what are those specifically? Is it Lexile that we're looking at? And
So for this particular one, we're looking specifically at the GMAS Reading Status Indicator. So that is that domain that's comprised of reading and vocabulary items from the GMAS ELA assessment.
okay, awesome. And then, let's see. Okay, one question that's a little off topic, but not really, because I've been curious about this for a while. We talk a lot about how we want more early learning opportunities, and we're all, I think, pretty much for that. One thing I thought maybe we could track, just throw one more KPI at you guys, but just an idea, is can we possibly track children who start maybe in pre-K or even if it's just K? Because I know that that might not be the case for some kids with the age requirement in Georgia. But if we could start and then kind of track them, even if it was just until 3rd grade, so that we could demonstrate if they're doing better. Because I also wonder, I hear a lot about the curriculum that the state provides in Head Start. And so for many reasons, not just to prove that maybe we need them to start earlier, but maybe also that we need to address the curriculum for Head Start.
So the Head Start curriculum, of course, that is under a different set of standards. It is not regulated by Godot. So that's GILT, and those standards are set. There's not a lot of flexibility or deviation from those standards that can occur. One of the things that we try to do to capture, I believe, what you'd like to take a deeper dive into and be able to assess is when we provide the report on kindergarten performance on G-KIDS. So G-KIDS is not only the assessment utilized for kindergarten students, but it's also the state curriculum. So it's 100% aligned to standards, and the way that the assessments occur at the middle of year and end of year, and these are hands-on individual student and teacher assessments that are happening at the middle and end of year points. The teacher is literally looking at the standard and seeing to what extent that child matches per a very clear rubric. So everything is very clearly designed to get an accurate assessment of where that child is. But one of the things that we try to do in presenting that data is we do a look back to see those students who are with us for pre-K, and we compare our previous pre-K performers versus those who were not with us in pre-K. Having said that, one of the sort of caveats of that assessment is that these students who are non-pre-K, they're non-SECPSS pre-K. They could have been in a pre-K program external to the district in a really good daycare. We don't know what's happening with those students, but so we do have that data. And what you do see are differences in performance. They're not huge differences, but they're definitely notable in that the ones who are with us in pre-K tend to outperform those who were not with us in pre-K during that kindergarten year and moving forward.
Awesome.
Sure.
If I may say something about the standards that Dr. May mentioned, the GELDs, which are the standards that are developed by the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning for children who are from birth through pre-K. So now that the new Georgia standards have rolled out, DECAL is looking at revising the GELDs so that they align and feed into the new Georgia standards. So right now we're functioning under the GELDs that previously existed, but the state is looking at adjusting those standards for birth to 5 so that there is more of an alignment with the new Georgia ELA standards. So I did want to raise that up.
That is really good to hear, actually. And one, I'm almost done, David, I promise. But one more thing I wanted to elevate about what I saw that I almost forgot. But when we have all discussed the 3rd grade heavy lift, you know, like teachers cannot be expected to be miracle workers, particularly in 3rd and up if they're reading at such a low grade level. But without even being prompted, Mrs. Barton also mentioned the fact that the new checklists that that teachers were given as cheat sheets, so to speak, in the classroom. She was telling them, blow this thing up, put it on your wall, be able to point to it, when a student asks you what you're looking for, so it's constant. I mean, it was wonderful. But they are also creating one that integrates seamlessly into 3rd through 5th, even though it isn't tested in K through 2. And she already had some ready to show where these are kind of the things we're looking for. I think it was yellow, like, you touch it and you just move along, but that way they're familiar with it. So the expectation then is that K through 2 will also be integrating some of the things that 3rd through 5th specifically are going to have to know, where it's not like all of a sudden here are some standards and you're going to be tested this year. And I think that is amazing. You guys heard what people were saying, and you did a good thing with that. So I appreciate it.
And you let Ms. Barton know that I will appreciate it. She will invite me the next time. That is. And I didn't know anything.
Dr. Bringman.
No questions, but a couple comments. Thank you for giving us a story of Jack that shows that we are doing individualized plans and using our data to reach the student where they're at all grade levels. So that was definitely welcomed. We've talked about these numbers, so keep chopping. In future lovely graphs, can we just put keys? I know they don't look nice, but can we put keys? Not everybody knows ED, EL, and SWD. And then maybe would it cost the district more to give us Amira accounts? I know I lived that experience, but not everybody has lived the Amira experience. So I don't know if fellow board members want to know what their Lexile score is. But if we had Amira accounts and you could go in as a kindergartner and see what that looks like for the student, or read to Amira as a 3rd grader and have her tell you to keep working on that one word you're saying incorrectly because you were raised in the South. Thank you.
Thank you tremendously for this presentation. I have a comment and a question, I guess you would say. Our baseline shows a decline from 58 to 53 with 3rd grade readers. My question is, if we're going to meet that 61%, we must be clear in accountability. My question is, what would be the safeguards or checkpoints that we'll monitor throughout this process?
So obviously, because GMAS is a summative assessment, what we can look for are the assessments that we give diagnostically at the beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year, which all precede the GMAS assessment. And those are Amira, which of course also serves as our universal screener, but also the NWEA MAP assessment, which provides assessments for both reading and mathematics. So tracking performance with regard to those. And I'll let Dr. Barnes add.
Yeah, so all of the things, first, good morning, that Dr. May just lifted up. Additionally, we'll be tracking our benchmark assessments that comes through DRC Beacon. It's important that we actually look at the standards that students will be assessed on at the end of the year. So we'll be tracking students' progress towards those standards. Now, that's from an assessment standpoint. The other thing that we're tracking is teacher capacity, how well they are actually teaching those particular standards, and looking at the collaborative planning sessions. And so we actually have a round of instructional rounds taking place. Yesterday, we had a phenomenal first round of instructional practices and monitoring that went on in several schools. So we can actually look at what teachers are teaching, how students are responding to that, and then go back to the planning session and say, how do we now revise our planning? And then the next iteration of this is to monitor the planning process. So it's just not looking at the student data point, but we also have to look at the adult behaviors of how we deliver the instruction, because students are actually just performing based off how we teach it to them. And so if we can right-size that and right-size the planning, we are very confident that we can see increase in student achievement on the particular assessments that Dr. May listed, such as the MAP assessments and our DRC Beacon assessments, things of that nature.
Awesome. Thank you tremendously. One last question. Dr. Tanya Howard-Hall, she raised a concern towards the pen and pad being eliminated. I understood the response that was given, but my question is, what is the practice throughout the state or throughout the country? Has there been any reviews on if paper and pens are still in full effect, or have the majority of the teaching lessons gone to electronic?
Yeah, so trends across the country is things are becoming more digitized, so it is mostly computer-based. But the practice of teaching in the classroom, we still can do a blended process where we are actually showing them how to write on paper, giving feedback, conferencing their writing that way. But it still has to be put into a computer-based platform. Now, the beauty of this is many of the things that we would do in writing, the computer-based platforms allows kids to do the exact same thing. So even from a writing standpoint to even some of the instructional strategies for reading comprehension, many of these computer-based platforms where we give these assessments allows for the highlighting and things of that nature. Even though it's in a digital platform, we still have to teach the habits of writing. And I think that's what the point that we don't want to miss is what are the great habits of writing so that whether you put it on pen and paper or in a computer-based platform, those habits are solid. Those places are just what we capture. We want to make sure the habits of writing have been developed in the student's mind, and so they can accurately put it on paper and into computer.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mr. Kachmar.
Thank you. On the writing versus digital issue, regardless of trend, I think the more variety and learning opportunities and practice opportunities we give students, the better. I'm 50-something, and I learn better by writing, even though I spend 98% of my day typing. And I know my kids, all of whom were students, had additional learning opportunities by writing after they had spent half their day on the computer. So some kids learn better by writing, some learn better visually, some learn better typing. If we do all of the above, that I think it's going to enhance. My second, I don't have questions either. I have two general comments apart from that one. I feel like we're on a really good path with really good leadership. My biggest complaint over the last 15 years has been we initiate something and then 3 years later somebody goes to a conference or there's an article somewhere and we change. Let's get really good at this. The people in this room appear to understand it well and are implementing it well. Let's make sure our teachers have an opportunity to get really good and comfortable with this. Let's not panic because, oh, we read something somewhere or there's a number that's a little skewed. Let's stick with it, get good at it, so that we're the model for implementation. We can tweak around the edges, and this is a layperson saying it, so I don't have a master's in education, but it doesn't seem right to me that we change the rules every 2 or 3 years and then expect people to perform at high standards. Final comment is this. I appreciate the story of Jack because third grade reading is absolutely a critical measure, but we have to remember it's not dispositive. It's not the end-all be-all. Look at Jack's scores in 5th grade. There wasn't a direct correlation to his 3rd grade. And look at our SAT scores that came out this year. They've gone up and they're exceeding the state average. So there isn't a direct correlation. Did I get that right? National. So there isn't a direct correlation between 3rd and what happens after. It's highly influential. I'm not trying to downplay it, but we can't wring our hands solely based on 3rd grade scores in isolation. We have to look at the entire journey as well. I do agree, I'm not minimizing it. This is an important benchmark, but we have to look at the entire journey and not pay short shrift to K2 and everything after 3rd as well.
No, Go ahead.
have a question for Dr.
Ms.
Watts.
Hall.
Dr. Watts, do we have the money to put a para in all of our K1 and 2 classrooms?
So that is actually a strategy that I'm exploring for our priority schools. You all got a presentation on that to allow those
Yeah.
schools to go first.
Okay.
When you ask that question, the first thing that comes to my mind is choices and trade-offs. So we are going to have to make some difficult decisions about what we stop doing so that we can start doing some other things and have strategy and not just spend, because that's the budget that we've always spent. So it goes back to a financial presentation that you all saw at the retreat, and what the future projections of our district look like financially. So the short answer to the question is yes. We can have the money to do anything that we want to do, but the longer answer is that's going to require us to potentially stop doing some other things that we want to do, or that we have been doing, that may not be giving us a return on investment.
So the teacher senate seemed, other than the para situation, the other point they made was that they felt smaller class sizes would help. Is that something we're going to pilot at the 10, at the schools, the elementary schools in the pilots? Are we going to
So we
also look at that?
We are looking at allocations across our schools. There are some indicators to me that something is still off around how we allocate teachers. But in the financial report, I thought it was worth noting that class size has come down across our schools. And I think we also have to look at the national research on small class size, and there's actually not a lot of research out there that says small
That's right.
class sizes matter.
Okay,
So-
that was what I was going to get to. It sounds, oh yeah, if I have to teach 10 kids instead of 20,
Right,
I'm going to succeed more.
yes. And I know that's not a
Perhaps.
popular answer.
Yeah,
People don't want to hear
perhaps
that, but
that's
that's what the
true.
research says.
Yeah, but lots of time, that quality of instruction overrides any of that other. You can have a class of 25, or you can have a class of 10, and those 10 are struggling. That
And
quality of instruction.
It really boils down to an effective teacher and
Yeah.
giving them the resources and support that they need.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's not something we have to vote on, whether we put these parents in the.
It would be a budget. It would be a budget, yes.
All right, next we have student, I'm sorry, was there more? Okay, good, okay. Okay, all right. Student discipline. And I know that there are going to be a lot of questions and comments on this one. Can we wait until the end of this presentation to do that? Please.
All right, good morning again. The focus of this presentation is on school year 24-25 student discipline. It is also aligned with strategic priority 1 on student growth and achievement for choice-filled futures. And we're honing in on performance objective D, providing high-quality support and services for whole child development. And the KPI of focus in this presentation is decreasing student behavior referrals and incidents as measured by the weighted suspension rate across grades 6 through 12. School discipline policies and practices are a national concern, so much so that the U.S. Department of Education weighs in heavily on this and denotes policies and practices as a critical part of the school's overall climate, and they hold the following beliefs. All students deserve access to welcoming, supportive, and safe schools. Successful school climate and student discipline involves setting all students up for success by meeting their academic, social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health needs, and ensuring that schools have the necessary tools to assist students with addressing any behaviors that could otherwise interfere with their or other students' learning or impact school safety. When it comes to reporting discipline in the state of Georgia, the Georgia Department of Education computes student discipline as a weighted suspension rate. So it's a weighted value based on the number of in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, alternative placement, or expulsion referrals as reported in our student information system, PowerSchool. What you see denoted in the table on the right is the action and the associated weight value. So any number of in-school suspensions are weighted at 0.5. 1 to 2 days of out-of-school suspension has a weight value of 1. 3 to 4 days is weighted at 3. 5 to 9 has 5. 10 or more days of OSS will yield a weighted value of 7. Alternative assignments are weighted as 6, and expulsions are the same as 10 or more days of OSS and are also weighted at 7. So the sum of the weighted values in terms of computing the weighted suspension rate is divided by the total number of students within the grade band, the student group, subgroup, or the overall school enrollment. Pre-K, it's important to note, is always excluded from the numerator, but always included within the denominator enrollment count. So the weighted value is presented, and when we compute this out per school, we get an overall average weighted suspension rate, and then we take the grade levels 6 through 12, and we get an overall weighted suspension rate for grades 6 through 12, which I am pleased to report in school year 2025 was an 18.90, which was a significant decrease of 2.5 points as compared to school year 2024. And we well exceeded the target decline for this year. Our target decline for this year was 1.1 points. We exceeded that by 1.4. School level weighted suspension rates for students in grades 6 through 12 range from 0.36 at Savannah E-Learning Academy to 43.05 at Duren Middle School. The most prevalent referrals that we saw in school year 2025 were student incivility, fighting, and disorderly conduct. In school year 2025, the weighted suspension rate continued to decrease for both middle and high school grades, while elementary grades saw another small increase in the weighted suspension rate. Middle grades weighted suspension made the most significant improvement in school year 2025 with a 4.6 point decrease as compared to the previous year. Within the elementary grades, we saw a small increase of 0.5. So the table presents a 3-year look as well as the associated differences, and please note all of the green. We're making significant improvement across the board in the critical areas, grades 6 through 12, of note in the KPI. When we look at subgroup or student group performance, what we see is some differences that are worth noting. This 2025 weighted suspension rate noted variables of addressing that are worth taking a deeper look at or addressing with regard to specific student groups. So we saw higher weighted suspension rates for Black and multiracial students, for male students, for economically disadvantaged students, and for students with disability as opposed to or as compared with all of the other subgroups noted. And with that, I turn the floor over to Dr. Barnes to discuss strategies.
All right, so as we approach the strategy for our discipline and student engagement across the district, we want to make sure we balance it from a support and accountability phase. So when we talk about systems and support, and as you're aware, has been shared with you before, is We want to be proactive and preventive, so that some of the things that we have seen, particular high areas of incivility, fighting, and disorderly conduct, that we are minimizing those areas. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can possibly do from a district's perspective, staff perspective, that we are being proactive and being preventative. Some of those things we'll talk about in the upcoming slides. But then once a student does commit an infraction, there is an accountability phase that we have to engage in, and that is responding to that infraction. And then, but once the student has committed the infraction, we have to engage into a restorative process. How do we get this student back into the education environment where they're making a different set of choices and they are not repeat offenders? So we got to make sure that accountability is just not all punitive, but it's all restorative, and how we bring the student back into an educational setting that's appropriate for them, so that they can continue to learn within our school district. So from that proactive standpoint, first and foremost, it's the supervision and student engagement. We spent a considerable amount of time opening the school year, developing specific protocols, getting very granular about how we want students to move about in our schools, engage in common spaces, and what are the specific things that staff should be seen doing as they are monitoring students during arrival, transitions, lunch, dismissal, et cetera. In some cases, we've had schools to really get granular and analyzing their data to say, where did we have the most fights in our previous year? And so we're going to change our supervision roster to make sure we have more supervision in these particular areas of the school. Some of those schools that did that and have done it well, we have seen a reduction of fights, disorderly conduct in those specific areas this year so far. Then the next thing is around the classroom. And so we talk about the main areas of the school, but it's also the classroom where we have to make sure that we are constantly giving teachers the necessary support around classroom management and student engagement strategies. What that looks like today is we are giving the support from a district for our first and second year teachers, but aside from that, we believe that all teachers need support, not just first and second year teachers. So this is where we are beefing up our instructional coaching around student culture. And what does that look like? So as with some of the other things that were talked about today, yesterday I was in schools and I saw teachers using lots of the strategies to be able to engage students in an instructional lesson, also how they positively narrated to students that were following their teachers' expectations, but how they also use consequences for students who were not following those expectations, that didn't lend itself to removing the child from the class, but it was done in a way to get the students re-engaged, but it was an adult behavior that changed. And then lastly, we got to understand that there's a significant benefit of family engagement and communication systems. So what does that look like for our schools as they engage with our parents, that we become more partners when we see the warning signs of students that may be bringing some challenges to the schoolhouse? How do we provide those wraparound services and constantly stay in communication with the parent and communicate to the parent, this is what we're doing to help your child, but also what are you seeing so that we can help your child best. In many of the cases that we've seen so far that we've been able to intervene, so a lot of times parents have made us aware that these are some things that have been brewing in the neighborhood that they've seen on social media, and once they make us aware of it, our principals and assistant principals are able to intervene quickly, and our Board of Education police are able to intervene quickly, which keeps those behaviors from spilling over into the schoolhouse. From a preventive standpoint, it is important for us to understand that we have to look at those early warning indicators that come through our MTSS structures, prioritizing our supervision during transitions, the hot spots in schools that I talked about earlier, de-escalating training and utilizing our mediation strategies so that we can have more of a proactive approach around conflict resolution before things escalate, particularly if we know about it on the front end. And so teaching students those coping skills so that things don't escalate into a fight. And then also those just individual student behavior interventions that would take place in the school, how we leverage our school counselors, social workers, and our student support services to be able to support students before things escalate and get out of hand. We use a progressive system for discipline following our student code of conduct from level 1, 2, 3 infractions. And so the important thing about this is that we got to ensure safety. We got to ensure that we're consistent by using the student code of handbook. And then there's a level of discretion where principals have to use flexibility how they support students. As you remember in the retreat, we talked about some specific things where we know the student code of conduct is very heavy on one end, and we may need to go and look at some things a little differently. But then also looking at we can give a maximum of 5 days. Do we have to give a child 5-day suspension or a 10-day suspension? Can we give them 3 days or 2 days, or is there opportunity to do something else where we don't have to always suspend the child, but then if a child does have to be suspended from school, how do we do that in a restorative way? So when the child does re-engage in the school, they have a change of behaviors and how we get those wraparound services. The restorative piece. This is that bridge. This is where we have to bring everybody around the round table and working with our student services department and how they are now engaging in those student services meeting with teachers, bringing the parent to the table when possible, and also the students to create actual behavior support plans so that students understand that I made a mistake, but here are some things I can do differently, and I don't have to continue to make that mistake in the future. But also, what can we do as a school district and use our external support, such as our mediation center, to continue to support students in a more structured way based off their behaviors that they are bringing to the table. This is another level of accountability. It's not just we make a decision on a child, and then the kid goes out and say, hey, nobody is responsible in trying to help me. This is where we bring everybody to the table, and there's consistent, I would say unified continuity of accountability from the leaders in the building, the teachers, and student services, along with the parents. I would take any questions regarding our discipline data approach.
Mrs. Hall.
Dr. Barnes, peer mediation, that's always been a good tool. But I wonder, are we doing peer mediation in a smart way? Like if the kids who are the peer mediators are all kids who have never been in trouble in their life and are on the high honor roll, is that the most effective way of making a peer mediation effective? So that's just something I wonder if our people who make the decisions at the school site can see that as an opportunity to get Sean, who's in trouble sometime, but not a lot. Maybe his input would help more than somebody who's never known what it is to be in trouble in any way. So
Yes, ma'am. That is
that's
correct.
just something I was thinking of. Also, how many times does a teacher take the opportunity to call a parent with some good news, rather than when that phone rings and you see that 395 number, it's a problem, So that's an easy thing. I don't care what they do, anything good, call and say, guess what, your child today, because that's going to be talked about that night and that kind of thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, on the downside, sometimes I think we don't really understand some of the horrific things our children can do to each other. And I'm not going to give any specifics, but there was a para who told me that a child came up to her and said, I don't like her and I'm going to spit on her, and went over there and spat on the child right in front of the parent, right after she told the parent that was what she was going to do. I don't know that when we sit here and look at these numbers and stuff, we actually realize that that's what our employees are having to deal with, children who are that, you know, we say, okay, uncivil, that's past uncivil to me. So I want us, like Sean is saying, let's stick with this. Let's be as real and as realistic as we can be about what our site leadership is really dealing with, so that we're more creative in our strategies than just, you know, kind of patting things down and not really understanding what some of our children are capable of doing.
Right.
That's all I have.
Mr. Kachmar.
On the reaching out to talk about good things issue, I know all of my kids, teachers, and others in the building would sometimes just send emails to the parents, hey, here's a great thing that your child did today. Or if we saw them at Publix or Kroger or in the halls, we'd get those as well. So it does happen. It does. On the repercussion side, I'm all for progressive discipline, restorative practices, meeting kids where they are, understanding the bigger dynamics, et cetera. But Ms. Campbell made this point during our retreat. There are some things, though, that you skip to the end of the progressive discipline line. And I wonder, to Ms. Hall's point about, you know, understanding what our staff is dealing with, we could ask everybody up here, what are the no tolerance behaviors that will skip you to the end of the line of progressive discipline? And we would probably come up with different lists. What I'm like, let's give them a chance to get better on, somebody else might say, nope, out forever. So it's a subjective assessment to a certain extent, but I think we could do a better job. Our student handbook is this thick, right? If I pulled out a multiple choice quiz on what's in there, I guarantee not just the kids, I guarantee staff would not get 100. And please don't, that's not a challenge. I'm just saying there's a lot in there. And do we do enough to communicate to our kids repercussions of certain types of behaviors? And, you know, I'm going to tie this back to the discussion about cell phones. We have cell phone policies. We have policies about use in classrooms. Are they clearly articulated to students about here are the significant repercussions if you engage in these behaviors? I know they aren't, at least from feedback from the students I talk to. But I didn't bring that up to talk about cell phones. I brought it up to talk about some things like, you know, pre-planned violent conduct. Is that okay, we're going to do restorative justice, or is it, hey kids, at the beginning of the year and every quarter, you need to know if this happens, you're out for a year. You're out until we decide you can come back. I don't know what the punishment should be, but are we communicating certain things don't go through our progressive discipline? Certain things are entirely unacceptable and subject to more severe discipline from the beginning. And I think part of our process should be a clarification and a reiteration of what those types of things are. And hey, we have zero tolerance for this. Kids will be kids, I get that, but assault, sexual assault, bullying, some bullying things that is, you know, severe. We need to figure out where those lines are and how to communicate zero tolerance long-term for some of that and make sure those issues are communicated to kids, I think.
Yes, sir.
Campbell?
So I have a couple of questions. I am of the mind that we should have certain consequence, like zero tolerance for, say, violence. I mean, again, with the reframing, you know, we should be definitely meeting kids where they are, but we should be looking out for the vast majority of kids who are there to learn and who want to feel safe. And I hate that sometimes when I hear or see things, written down somewhere about a student, it feels like we're catering a policy to the small percentage. And I think we should do everything in our power to give that child a fighting chance. But part of that may be punitive, right? Part of that may be getting their attention before the world does while they're children, and it's not a charge, you know? With that being said, the incivility piece, I think we may have spoken to it a little bit at the retreat. It was the #1 highest increase. Do we have a good, I looked through the handbook that you guys gave us, the one that Mr. Cashmore was referencing. The code of conduct, purple. And I didn't really see a clear definition. I know incivility is mostly subjective, right? I mean, is there any objective measure that we can give to that with a clear consequence where it's like, if you keep, being incivil? Because, I mean, I've seen things range from hitting somebody in the head, unsolicited and without their knowledge as incivility, to swearing at your teacher or not doing something that was asked of you.
Yeah, so I think what you raise is a valid point, and while it's centered around incivility, it's really a bigger conversation that we have to continue to work with our school leadership on, is defining the student incident for what it is according to our student code of conduct. So when you give an example that someone was hit in the head and it was coded as incivility, well, in actuality, that is not what was defined in our student code of conduct. So there is always an opportunity for us to build our staff understanding around that and making sure that we're coding things as it is according to that student code of conduct. Yes, ma'am.
That's awesome. I think that would help us a lot, and I think that it may seem like a lot of numbers at first when we get serious. I mean, especially if we can get serious about anything, surely it's violence. And I know that we'll discuss it and we'll all, be able to talk about what we think is best or worse. But if we could get serious about some things and mean what we say without any sort of, inferred bias or whatever it is, it's just, this is the infraction, this is the consequence, and we meant it. I think for a while we may see an increase in numbers, as we heard, I believe at the retreat, that maybe you reported it, that some of the teachers had said they were reporting it now. In the past, maybe it wasn't, they didn't feel as free to do so. But if we could just get serious and show them that we mean what we say, that eventually it would go down. And then, let's see. Do we have data? Do we follow any metric KPI data on our use of the mediation center, like what services are being provided and how effective it is at recidivism, et cetera?
Yeah, so we don't have a KPI around it. However, Mr. Butler and I, we just met with the mediation center about 2 weeks ago to really shore up what that work looks like going over this year, what we're going to be monitoring, and what are the desired outcomes as a result of us partnering with the mediation center and kind of helping to refine their scope of work and the schools that they're supporting and how they support those schools.
Awesome.
So we're already working on that.
Of course you are. Thank you.
Ms. Grabowski?
So a couple things, picking up on the question about the mediation center. I was in a meeting earlier this morning with some other community leaders, and we were talking about, kind of workforce development, all those things. And, for many years, we talked about the need for soft skills. Then that got moved to emotional intelligence. And then one of the other people that was part of this group said the next kind of thing on the horizon that's going to be so important and for employers is interpersonal communication and the ability to be able to communicate person to person.
Yep.
We know a lot of that's around the phone. And it leads me to also think about conflict resolution.
Yep.
And I think, and I don't know, I want to know more about where we're going with Mediation Center. I think that in the past, we've used them a lot to be able to de-escalate and do restorative justice. I would love for us to get upstream and start to offer conflict resolution, interpersonal communication classes in our schools. Because it's an issue that goes beyond just discipline, but also to being a successful person in life. And if we are going to be, we are going to live up to our mission and vision statements, being able to teach those skills, starting at the earliest level. That little girl that says, I want to spit on you because let's talk about how to work through our feelings, because we've gotten so isolated and so siloed that we are in this unique position as a school district to work with our students. So I would love to see how we can include that in our curriculum in some way at every level. The student awareness idea for Mr. Katchmar, I agree 100%. Like, our code of conduct is very, like, this is our policy. Like, let's do a cheat sheet and let's make the fun posters. Hey, kid, got a problem with a student? Think about hitting that student? Think again. This is the consequence. We can make these things like little teasers of information around the school. And to Ms. Hall's point about, getting good news about your student, I've mentioned before the Love Your People that's at STEM, which both of my children went to middle school there, and as a parent, I loved it because it was that positive, it was that emotional intelligence side, it was that positive reinforcement, and the kudos came from the students. So the students, they had a character trait for each month, and the students always identified what student in their classroom they saw, expressing that character trait, and there was a reward, like whoever got the LYP for your class, you got whatever. So again, the more that we can do upstream, positive reinforcement, help kids have the skills to deal with conflict in a way that doesn't lead to a discipline report, I'm all for being able to integrate that any way we possibly can. Thank you.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, thank you. We talk about culture and discipline a lot. One of my main concerns is the integrity and the accuracy of discipline being reported to the district at the district level. No one wants to send in a negative report identifying all of those different referrals. So what are we doing to empower our administrators to submit a true reflection of their school's data, which impacts their culture? That's the first question, then I have a few others.
Yeah, so to that first question, that is a real issue, and it's just not here. It's not germane to Savannah, right? But this is the context. So my team, who supervises principals, we're not taking it from a punitive standpoint to say, at this point, you had X number of suspensions, and we come up with punitive measures. We're taking it from the standpoint, this is what you have. Okay, let's deal with it. How can we work? What is that we need to do to first get on the front end so you don't have so many student issues? But because you are having them, what do we need to do to help you get the school under control so you don't have these issues moving forward? Taking that approach from a more asset, perspective, say, how can we help you with this? Creates a space, and it's a culture space that now I don't have to hide something because people are here and we're working together to solve a problem. Now, when you don't respond to that, now that's a whole nother conversation. But now the entry point that we have today is I'm asking my team, look at where they are, find out how we want to help them, hold them accountable to that so that we can get better moving forward. Now, we do set, like you said, a SMART goal. We did set a goal. We are going to set goals around reducing our disciplinary referrals and suspensions. But that doesn't mean to not report. That means that what are we doing to make our school environment better so that we don't have a large number of referrals and suspensions moving forward.
Okay, and the next concern is, many times when we go in executive meetings and we discuss student matters, and we're reading the discipline report to vote whether or not that child should be allowed to exit from the alternative school to go back into their zone school. But when we look at the data and we see that little Harold or Johnny or whoever we want to call him, Tony, or Tonita, they've had problems since first grade. They've had serious infractions elementary school, then we continue to read and we see that it escalates to middle school. And then by the time they reach high school, now they're in an alternative school. So we really need to concentrate on measures to provide those students with the help they need before they end up going from grade span to grade span and ultimately, which I would not want to ever happen, to make Chatham County be on national news for something bad that could happen. Because when we read these reports, we see the trend of discipline problems as early as first grade. And just lastly, too, also with teacher burnout, I know from hand-on experience, it is a direct correlation with student behavior and student discipline. I've had to go in a classroom to observe a teacher, and the pre-Ks had her crying, upset. She couldn't even control that class as young as 4-year-olds. So we really need to really, I appreciate the strategies, and I'm really, it is my desire that once these strategies are implemented, that we will see some positive results.
Mrs. Hall?
Very quickly, I was so glad to hear Ms. Grabowski say that she was meeting with some other community people, because we have to realize lots of these problems come to us. You know, we're not, it's like we're the focal point of everything that happens in society. It comes to us. So we have to realize that we need some help. There used to be, you could pretty much, it was, they said, a three-legged stool: the church, the home, and the school. And we kind of had an even leverage between those. That's not so anymore. We're kind of out here on our own, and we kind of have to realize that not all of these problems are because of poor instruction, and, you know, it's society bringing their ills to us. But having said that, I think you're meeting with other community people and they realizing that these children need to be employable after high school is going to help us the more they get involved. And by the way, the word is uncivil, no more incivil, uncivil. That's the archaic expression. I looked it up, incivil. So we have to going forward, we know to say uncivil. And could you all please number the pages, because I want everybody to look back at the weighted suspension sheet. It looks like our alternative school assignment, that's as bad, that's worse than being out of school 5 to 9 days. That has the weight of, to me, that means you are kind of cast out into purgatory and what is happening. Maybe we should spend some time looking at what's happening at our alternative schools and seeing what we can possibly do so your time there is not just time spent away, you know, you're the other, spent away from education, and you're just kind of vegetating there. Because that, and Dr. May, am I reading that correct to say a 6.0 weighted score? That means
That's one of their, but, so that means once they're assigned there, then that's the weight. Now, once they get there, their experience that you're discussing is what we want to focus on. And
yeah, Dr. Barnes, that
Yep.
experience when we get there,
Right.
when I get there, it's dismal.
Yeah.
So I understand. I understand what you're saying. The weight is on the fact of, you know, what it's like, but it's the dismal experience, and I think it's something we could do something about if we gazed, you know, focus our attention on it.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be, you know, that you're in purgatory and maybe you get to come back. So, thank you.
Scotchmark.
Do these numbers and this data include charter schools?
Yes, as with all of our reporting, charter schools are included in that district overall score.
Okay, so if a child is asked to leave a charter school for behavioral purposes and then they transfer to their local zone school,
Yes.
how is that
It
classified?
impacts our score.
Pardon me?
It will impact our score.
But how is it classified?
With regard to the transfer itself, so that would be a standard transfer. It doesn't impact the transfer. The weighted value for whatever the infraction was would be weighted and computed within our overall district.
And then do we
weighted suspension.
evaluate the stated rationale from the charter school to determine placement for that student, whether they go back to their zone school or they go back to alternative school, or if they're expelled under our policies?
Yeah, so we actually, whether it's charter school or any other school, LEA, if they were to come from an alternative setting, then we're going to recommend that they go back into an alternative setting and place them there. But if they weren't removed from the actual regular school setting and it was a suspension and then they went through a revocation, then they'll go back to their home school unless there was an alternative, pending alternative placement, then we will put in our alternative setting.
I'm not sure I understand that, but I can get with you offline.
Okay.
So our charter schools have different discipline and restorative justice practices than we do as a district. So if a charter school says, you threw a pencil, that's expulsion for us, but in our district, that's progressive discipline, but not expulsion to, or placement in a alternative setting, how do we correlate those different behavioral rules?
So as you well know, charter schools definitely have autonomy in that regard as well. However, having said that, some of them do actually mirror the district's code of conduct for students. So, for example, Oglethorpe follows our code of conduct. Tybee Island Maritime Academy does as well. Just two, for example. So whatever action is taken by the school, we cannot change that action. All we can do is receive the information and make the appropriate placement. As Dr. Barnes indicated, if it's not something that is a severe infraction, it would be back to the homeschool location, but depending upon the severity of the incident, it could be an alternative school assignment.
So we'll look at the substance of the behavior, not just what was written, you know, if charter, because some of our charters, I think, are more severe on discipline than we are, and some are, the pendulum swings more towards restorative practices than we are. And so if somebody throws a pencil and gets expelled, we don't just look at expulsion, we look at the underlying behavior and then try to make an assessment that's child-specific?
Right, so if you're using that example, then quite naturally, if they were assigned to let's say an expulsion, that wouldn't have been an expulsion. They were expelled from that school, which means they were, they're gonna come back to us. So they will go to their regular home school. Now, as we look at the details of the incident, then that does position us to say what supports we put in place. So, because we already know this is what the child's background is, this is what their track record, we can put those things in place. It also allows us to say if this child was to commit that infraction within our LEA, then we can go to more of the end of that, continuum of progressive discipline, because the child has already committed such a infraction previously. So we could go towards like an alternative placement or an expulsion if necessary.
For me, it would be helpful if this data also noted which schools mirror our student code of conduct and which have different codes of conduct, just for data analysis purposes, because.
That could be a notation.
Okay, thanks.
This has been great. I just want to make a comment about charter schools and how they do discipline or whatever. One of the reasons we approve charter schools is that we expect charter schools to do some things that we can learn from. So, and this is kind of reflects something that Ms. Grabowski says. said, I can only speak for one. So at Savannah Classical, the first thing that children learn at Savannah Classical, the first thing are 8 virtues. They have to memorize those virtues. And what happens when a child misbehaves, the conversation is, what virtue are you not displaying? And there is the opportunity for them to correct themselves based on the virtues. It's important for children, especially young children, to know why something is wrong. It can't be, well, because I felt like it. No, it's because you're not displaying compassion. Well, why did you talk back to, or you're not displaying, I forgot all the virtues. But let me tell you something. If you go to Savannah Classical right now and ask a second grader to name all 8 virtues, they can. For some of these children are not coming from homes where they're taught the virtues. And I think along with all the other things that we teach, I think it's important for us to teach our children virtues. And by the way, there's a difference between virtues and character. Virtues are absolutes. Honesty is an absolute. Compassion, that's an absolute. So I would encourage us to pick that up. And virtue, there's no copyright on virtues, so we can freely use them. But I believe it is so important that our children have a basis for why they should act the way they should act in civil society. Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. All right. Next, we have our annual status report on long-range facilities plan, and I think this is more related to transportation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If it pleases the board, Mr. President, we submitted the document in advance, so we will focus on the transportation perspective. Okay, so there was a slight adjustment to what was posted, and the reason for the adjustment, and you have the updated copy in front of you, is we met as a team with our principals, and our principals had some requests, and so we'll highlight those. I did want to give an opportunity to introduce our transportation director, who is over operations and planning, Miss Annette Ling-Neal, who's with us today. And so she will also help guide any specific questions. So remember, let's give me the hard ones, her the easy ones, okay? Okay, so the purpose of this discussion is only for discussion purposes. I want to highlight that. There is no decision that's been made at this point. But leaning on strategic priority 4 about effective use of our resources, we are bringing forth a request to consider some boundary realignments that will reduce our student travel time, our transportation costs. It will optimize some of our underutilized schools. It will support growth in Western Chatham County, and it is aligned with our long-range facility plan phase. Again, this is just for exploratory purposes.
We will not close any schools tomorrow. There will not be any teacher adjustments tomorrow, so just exploratory purposes. So highlighting some benefits that this would provide both our students and our district. It would impact over 300 students. It would save the student ride time on the bus between 20 to 30 minutes. And that's at a minimum, and it would have route reductions, which would mean that we would be able to increase our on-time arrival. So those are all of the high-level benefits. The first discussion that we are going to highlight is Hubert Middle School and Myers Middle School. So as you can see on the map, this is our current attendance zone, and we're going to be talking about that section in the top, the middle of the page, top green right. So you'll see the slight adjustment in that area is what's being recommended. So it just shows you that. So the reason for this request is we currently have students that go from Juliet Low to Hubert and then to Johnson. So they're kind of out of a feeder pattern normal progression. So our request is to realign these students to go from Juliet Low up through Myers and then to Johnson. So it would impact 46 students, which would save 20 minutes on the bus and allow us to eliminate a route, which is a double back route. So that means that the driver takes those students, goes back and picks up another group and takes it. So that would help on an efficiency perspective. The transportation team has also provided another outlook to look at the numbers, and you can see there. This does not maximize on really the building utilization. This is more supported on the efficiency standpoint and the student experience, saving time on the bus and keeping them in alignment with their feeder pattern. If it pleases the board, Mr. President, I'll keep going and then.
Please.
All right. The next attendance boundary realignment will be focusing on our West Chatham schools. However, last year or 2 years ago, we did a realignment that impacted Gould, and it moved the students from the high school over to Beach High School, but the middle school was not adjusted. So in this proposal, it also includes Durin Middle School and West Chatham Middle School for that section. So for the Pooler section, we did a community meetings last year in December to speak with the families to say, what should we do with Pooler Elementary School? Remember, this is one of our oldest elementary schools. It's from the 50s. It's built on 5 acres. So we are challenged on the site itself. The number one request from the community was to renovate Pooler Elementary School. However, in our proposal for the West Chatham K-8, we're eliminating the middle school. So there will not be a middle school for these students to go to. So that is why we are proposing to move to number 2, which was amend the Pooler Elementary School to be an early learning center. So it would be a FORMI or out on the West Chatham side. So the first step would be to relocate the Pooler Elementary School students over to Bloomingdale. In order to do the renovation, we need to move the students out of that site. And so Bloomingdale has the capacity at this time to accommodate that. Speaking with the principals, they asked that we go ahead and make the adjustments. So when we move the students, Pooler Elementary School would now be converted to Pooler Early Learning Center. So they would be located at Bloomingdale, but they would be the Early Learning Center. And so that would allow the students who were in pre-K through first grade to go ahead and be the little Pooler Bulldogs, and then the students who were in the second grade and up would be the Bloomingdale Bears. Additionally, we would like to take the students that are in 5th grade right now and keep them on site and transition Bloomingdale to be a 2 through 6th grade. And the next year, we would ask to transition the 7th grade and the next year 8th grade. So it would converting Pooler to a 2-8, but it would do it in a slow process. Okay, so this shows you the current boundaries for Bloomingdale and Pooler. You'll see that bottom little subsection of bright green is the current attendance zone but that is right near New Hampstead K-8. So in our request, we are asking to efficiently move those students over to New Hampstead. And so this is the new boundary adjustments, and I apologize, the colors did not come in clear, but it shows you the Pooler and the Bloomingdale section splitting out PK through 1 and 2nd through 8. So you'll notice in the chart above that when we do this cleanup, there would be an opportunity for 88 students who are currently zoned for Bloomingdale to go to New Hampstead. That was that lower section. And then 83 students, we would gain 88 students at Bloomingdale from New Hampstead, but lose 83 students, that's a small section. And then keeping those rising 5th graders on site. So this would take Bloomingdale to about 867 students for the time that Pooler and Bloomingdale were in that location. Step 3 would be open the Pooler Early Learning Center. We call it the Land of the Little, serving pre-K 1 through 1st grade bands. And then this would be for Pooler Elementary School, Bloomingdale Elementary School, and West Chatham Elementary School. So it would be for those schools, our Early Learning Center for PK through 1. Bloomingdale would serve grades 2 through 8. West Chatham Elementary School would serve grades 2 through 5. West Chatham Middle School would serve grades 6 through 8. And then in school year 27-28, we would start the design, and hopefully in 28-29, the construction of the K-8 facility at West Chatham Elementary School. Our goal is to leave the students in the current facilities at West Chatham Elementary and West Chatham Middle School while we build the new facility and hopefully directly behind it. Again, that is dependent on the environmental site review and experts to lend in. And as of today, we have received our letter that we can begin collecting E5. So we can move forward with that. And then after the K-8 was constructed, then we would build the Pooler High School. The reason that the idea circulated to build the K-8 first is those students at West Chatham Elementary School and West Chatham Middle School are in buildings that we wish to go ahead and to renovate, build them a new facility. They're struggling with air conditioning and other maintenance challenges. So this is the current attendance boundaries. So the light blue is New Hampstead K-8, the pink is West Chatham Middle School, and the yellow is Durin. So this shows you that Gould discussion. So right now students go from Gould to West Chatham Middle School and then to Beach. And so from a transportation perspective, we are running buses that we could help be more efficient by running them over from Gould to Durin and Beach. Durin and Beach being right near each other would help from a student perspective on their ride time, and it would help eliminate a route. So this is the proposal. It would move over those students in the green section over to Durin out of West Chatham Middle School. And so the numbers here would be 33 students would be moved from West Chatham Middle School to New Hampstead K-8. 185 students would move over to Durin. So that is, again, just highlighting the historic piece that we've already moved the high school. We're now asking for the movement of the middle school. This would save at least 20 to 30 minutes for a student ride time, and then it would also help eliminate the route. So that means we would be more efficient and help on our on-time arrivals. So this gives you additional student capacity data. Apologies for the small font. We'll work to see how we can make that larger in the future. So the timeline for this is this fall, with your approval, we would like to go ahead and move forward with some community engagement sessions in October. We would then like to bring this to the board for approval at the December board meeting. The spring of 2026, we would make sure that all of our routes have been finalized and all the families that were impacted were notified. And then in the August 2026, so school year 26-27 would be the first school year that the new boundaries would take place. This is our recommendation. And now, Mr. President, I will turn it back over to you.
All
right, so we're going to start on this side this time.
I was just going to ask, thank you for your presentation. My question would be simple. Have we had conversations with the school principals about these changes?
Yes, sir. We did have a conversation with the school principals and the school leadership team last week, and it was very positive.
Were they able to give us any insight on the pros and or difficulties that will stem from it?
They did not elaborate on any pros or difficulties. We did ask for their feedback, and in fact, that is why we made the change from the Bloomingdale and Pooler side. No other principals elevate any requested change, but we can always circle back just to make sure that we have outlined any pros and any pieces we need to be aware of to adjust.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir. And also, just to follow up with those principals, they were very affirmative that this will solve some of the concerns that they had with the boundaries. So we do feel good having gotten their endorsement on the front end. As Ms. Davidson pointed out, we were able to make some changes based off of their feedback. And at the conclusion of the meeting, we did get some positive affirmation that this was the right direction moving forward to keep a constant feeder pattern for these continuous boundaries.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Dr. Brinkman?
And I'm thumbing through the big long-range facility plan as fast as possible, but on the Pooler Elementary change going to a 2-8?
Yes.
Oh yeah, here we go, number
I'm sorry,
11, Pooler
Bloomingdale.
Elementary School renovation, correct?
So a Pooler would be the early learning center after the
Okay,
renovation.
sorry, Pooler would be the early learning center, and then Bloomingdale is gonna become 2-8.
2-8, yes, sir.
So we just, yep, gotcha. So we just opened that Bloomingdale. So how much money are we now going to dump into it to make it an appropriate middle school? And I'm coming from the reflex of my neighborhood has had a school that never, we are just now rising after 20 years of being forced to be a K-8 when it wasn't built to be a K-8 to meet those needs of middle school students. So what is our added cost now to renovate a building that the ribbon is still falling to the ground?
I think we'd have to get those specific numbers, but currently I will say that Bloomingdale has just over 300 students, and I believe the capacity of the building is something like 1,200 students.
Oh, I get that it is the appropriate move
Right.
in a utilization, and thank you for trying to make everything
Yeah.
better on utilization and on transportation. Fully agree,
But we gotta,
the right move.
yeah.
But I've got 6th to 8th graders for the last 20 years that have been using urinals and toilets that are made for K through 5. And that's different. And a gym that was made to be tiny. So where, before we roll this out and before you bring it to me in December to vote on, what is actually going to need to be done at that school so we're not thinking, oh, we'll get to that 10 years from now. Oh, that'll be E7. Because it just shouldn't be. If we're going to move 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in there, now is the time to change it, and that's going to suck money-wise.
Can you talk a little bit, Ms. Davidson, about some of the changes? I don't think there are many that would need to be made.
So I'll have to land back to the capital projects team. I do know we would have to work through the gym and amend the gym to be to a middle school level. I do understand, Dr. Bremen, your concern about the cost. I'll pull that and the other suggested changes because Bloomingdale does, as you mentioned, Madam Superintendent, does have the capacity up to 1,000 to hold. So it has the space, but the cost and the necessary renovation or changes, I will pull for that. But outside of the gym.
Yeah, gym and bathrooms.
Bathrooms.
Gym and bathrooms would be the big thing.
I believe that bathrooms now are built at a standard for everybody. There's no like little people bathrooms, because at your house, you don't have little people bathrooms.
For me, we were a little bit adjusting on the heights and other pieces.
But at the
at
elementary
Bloomingdale,
schools?
I would have to go in and confirm and
Okay.
look to see, would it accommodate up to 8th grade? I do think there.
I was just going with the urinals.
Yeah.
We're like the one that when we go into the bathroom, we're like we skip that one because it's
Yes,
for the
it's
kids.
little.
And that's all they had at Georgetown for forever. We're the ones at tallest fifth grade, and you got some kids in eighth grade that are taller than me.
Fifth grade too.
Yeah, so I get it.
I think the thing that we would also need to take into account, because as these kids move to middle school, they're also participating in athletics.
Yep.
So athletic fields, and also at the middle school level, students engage in deeper elective exploration. So I am sure that we would probably have to look at some of those middle school classrooms and how to make them more lab-oriented for CTAE exposure. So there will be costs.
Yeah, it makes
Right.
sense for the future. I just want a number.
Absolutely.
It makes sense completely.
Ms. Campbell?
I'll make this fast. I know we've gone over, and you were kind enough to talk to me a lot offline before the meeting. I look forward to meetings with the community because of the change in scheduling of the K-8 versus the high school first, and so everyone can hear, the reasoning, et cetera, that you're considering it. I'm a little confused about the 2nd through 8 in Bloomingdale, and then you had Pooler Elementary as a 2nd through 5th, West Chatham Elementary 2nd through 5th. But these schools will be K-8s other than Bloomingdale when it's all finished, all said and done, right?
Pooler will remain an early learning center.
For pre-K to.
West
For
Chatham.
pre-K through 1. West Chatham would be, the plan is to be a 2-8.
Oh, okay.
Bloomingdale to be a 2-8. And so that every student that is PK through PK through 1 from West Chatham, Pooler, and Bloomingdale would go to Pooler Early Learning Center. So you would start at Pooler Early Learning Center and then move either to Bloomingdale or to West Chatham.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. The one issue I would be concerned about is I know we've had land acreage sort of issues with the state because we don't have enough land, there's nowhere to build. That's why we're in this situation. Are we going to be able to, I think one of the biggest numbers on the PowerPoint was 600 capacity for them. Are we going to be able to accommodate that many pre-K to first graders at one site that small?
So that is the goal, is to be able to accommodate. Historically, I understand that that building used to accommodate over 600. There was some offices that were, classrooms converted to offices. So in this, we would be evaluating how we can add back classrooms. Of course, everything is dependent on Georgia Department of Education's approval. However, it's my understanding that they are not as stringent on early learning centers as they are on the primary, elementary, and K-8 from a site perspective of what you have to have. So this has about 5 acres, and I think it would need a lot more to operate as an elementary school. And our main point, not outside of the acreage limitation, was that we're eliminating the middle school. And so we try to not have students go into a K-8 at the upper level. So by eliminating the middle school, Pooler really has to become an early learning center in order to still be utilized in that facility, or we're forced to move them to a middle school that's outside of the region.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. I look forward to meetings.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Yes, thank you. We know that East Broad Elementary, East Broad was once an elementary school, K-5. Then it transformed into a K-8 school, and now it is a wonderful early learning facility. Pooler, also East Broad originally, it was built, I think, in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
However, Pooler was built in the 50s.
Yes, ma'am.
So how are we going to transform a facility as old as Pooler with the infrastructure to meet the qualifications and the state-of-the-art facility that we have on the east side with Formie? Because it's an open campus.
It is an open campus, and that would have to be something that we would work with the design team on how best we can change going forward. The goal would be, as best as possible, to eliminate the open campus piece, because from a security standpoint, that elevates the security concerns. But it will take extra time. So originally, if we were just going in, doing minimal work, we had planned a year. Now we've elevated 2 years, leaning on the capital projects team. They have said it is the design timeline that matters. We don't want to move our students in until the building is ready. And so we've added additional time, so a 2-year time frame, to make sure that we have time to do ample design, leaning on our academic experts to guide on how best we should make this facility, and then execution of the construction.
I would like to see a comparison price. What will it cost to actually build a new early learning facility as opposed to trying to renovate one that is old as Pooler Elementary?
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Dr. Hall. Dr. Hall, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, doctors, great.
There you go.
Well, one thing, though, can we actually build a new school if it's not in our E5 plan? I'm not sure that
That was a
would be
question
doable.
actually I had in response to
Yeah, I
what
don't
Dr.
think- I don't
Howard Hall
think
said.
we'd
We
be
had
able to do
9.6
that.
million allotted.
Yeah.
I do believe we have some flexibility, because obviously we've done that in other places, i.e. STEM. But STEM also moved from E4 to E5 in order to do that. So it also is a balance of the other projects. So if we're talking about rebuilding, that means money allocated for something else has to be moved to make that happen. So, what are we going to be willing to say gets adjusted? And we've had this conversation about other sites too. Like, we allocated funds based on what we said we were going to do. So if we change that, that means something can't get done. It's a choice and trade-off
And
conversation.
Godot
Well,
as
Dr.
well.
Watts, one thing is that we've been able to have a higher level of money coming in than we expected with East Bos, but still.
It doesn't come all
it
at one
doesn't-
time.
That's right, that's right.
And so it's a issue of cash flow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, my points are two. One, if the principals are very much in favor of this, I would love for them to pass that on to their PTAs and student council, so when we have these meetings, staff can be met with, a positive discussion as opposed to contentious back and forth, if in fact the school leadership already has given their endorsement to this. I think that would help us a lot. Durin is one of our pilot schools now, is bringing in over 100-some students, going to in any way skew that success, or has that been,
So one of the things that I have most recently done in the last couple of weeks is had a conversation with a principal that also received significant numbers of students this year that added a dynamic at that particular school. So Dr. Barnes and I are talking about when we do that, because that is that we impose that, right? When we say a school is going to now receive 150 more kids.
Yeah.
It does add a dynamic to a school, and so Dr. Barnes and I have begun talking about what type of resources and support do we need to afford to that school so that they can get through that transition period, particularly if there are just demographic differences, subgroup differences. You just can't move students into a school and, leave it. There has to be some support. So we're piloting that with a particular school this year. After I met with the principal, Dr. Barnes has worked to get that school, or is working to get that school, some additional support. So we would want to take the same mentality. Because when I met with the principal, I said, let's not talk about your school specifically. Let's talk about what we would need to do for any school
yeah,
that
what
is
would
getting.
best practices
Yes,
be?
and so we were
wherever?
able to kind of ideate and brainstorm. And it would not be ongoing support, but it would help in those maybe first couple of years when you're getting new students, especially in the hundreds of students.
And if we could make it where it's actually very attractive to incoming students, and very well received by the ones there, if we could be creative and really come up with some dynamics that would.
And we do some of that, but in terms of what this principal needed, it was more staff to handle just the additional intensity around special education, discipline, and things of that nature.
Okay. I worry a little bit about the perception if I'm a parent of a kid coming in and you have already placed the school kind of on a improvement plan.
Yep.
So that's going to need some PR.
Yes, we will need to massage that and really speak to the additional support and resources that these schools will be getting. Another idea that the principal and I exchanged on was, what if we did like a little mini summer camp? So if you were coming into that school for the first time, you and your parent kind of got this specialized time period where you acclimate to the building, not just open house, but like a real opportunity to spend time in a building so that when students show up on the first day of school, it's not their first opportunity. So we really had a good brainstorming session. We need to codify some of that, trial it at this particular school that I'm speaking about, but make that available to schools when we think about doing significant changes like that.
And Dr. Watts, we've had that experience with lots of our Gadsden kids going to Hodge. Am I right, Sean? It was Gadsden to Hodge. We had a large group of kids leave Gadsden and go to Hodge. And they worked it out where by the time school opened, those children felt very welcomed and very
Yes.
much a part of it.
We just
So-
need to codify it so that we have kind of a script for principals, and every principal's not trying to figure it out
Yeah.
on their own.
Right, okay, thank you.
Ms. Grabowski?
So, holy cow, keeping this straight is hard to do. Flow chart would be beautiful. So thank you for your work on this. And to Dr. Brinkman for bringing up the point about this brand new elementary school that now we're talking about changing. It's kind of, yeah. I'm looking at the proposed maps, and maybe it's a sequencing thing, but the map, the attendance zone for the 2nd through 8th grade for Bloomingdale overlaps with the attendance zone for the West Chatham Middle School. So which is actual the 6th through 8th attendance zone is not clear. And so that's just a detailed question that you don't have to answer now. But on a bigger picture, I'm curious how our projections feed into this, because it sounds like we're taking a lot of our middle school students who we thought were going to go to West Chatham, now putting them into Bloomingdale. We're going to end up with a kind of empty West Chatham. I personally, I understand all the benefits of what we're talking about, but I want to make sure that we're thinking about our forecast, and we're not going to end up in this situation in 3 years again where we can't even implement this plan. I'd rather and the other piece that I'm not super crazy about with the Bloomingdale losing their littles, that's one of our great neighborhood schools. And taking away that opportunity for those littles to walk to school with their families, always gives me heartburn. So I would love for us to evaluate all of those things and see if there's a way to keep Bloomingdale to not have those middle schoolers I'm fine with everything, but that gives me a little bit of heartburn to lose those lower grades at a brand new elementary school that's in the middle of a neighborhood, and have to repurpose a brand new elementary school to accommodate the middle school and all of the other things that go with it, and then maybe underutilize what is also going to be a brand new middle school at West Chatham. So that's my reflection.
Paul?
Yeah, I just want to remind you, Ms. Grabowski, we did that very thing with Williams. We built Williams, and it was a, little people's school, but then we decided to move all those children to Formie. And actually, certainly instruction-wise, Williams is thriving, but it did take that emotional wrench for the parents to get over that their kids would not be there. So we have done it, is what I'm saying.
We have
done it, and it's been successful.
And
so.
I think it makes a lot of sense. The two differences I think that transition had was those two schools are geographically much closer. So you don't have the geographical separation, but like you do with Pooler and Bloomingdale from the neighborhoods. And then the other thing is the west side is where we really see our high growth numbers coming in more so than the east side. So I wouldn't anticipate we'd have the rapid growth on the schools at Formy and Williams that we would potentially have on the west side.
And
But you're right, we've done it before and it can be done, but this one just gives me a little more pause.
I can confirm that Chief Jackson is working on executing our contract for the demographer. And so we will lean on their expertise because they can also pull for us the number of housing applications or permits or other pieces that we haven't brought in. But as part of this plan, we have room for growth at both the Bloomingdale 2.8 and the new K-8 at West Chatham. So, but I acknowledge the. Yes.
If they stay, we don't have that.
If they say, and remember, we're getting rid of the West Chatham Middle School as part of the process to utilize the land at West Chatham. We have to eliminate the middle school by creating a K-8. So there will not be a middle school for Bloomingdale nor Pooler. So we have to have some kind of opportunity for those students to go to a K-8, whether it's,
So in a K-8, a best practice is not to bring them in sixth grade.
Right.
One of the benefits of a K-8 is to have that continuity. So yes, there are middle school grades that would be available, but a best practice is not to have students coming from another school at sixth grade joining students who have been at a school K-5. The best practice is to have that build over time. So that's why she's saying when we build the K-8, there will be no traditional middle school.
Ms. Campbell?
Which, this will be quick, but which is one thing that the community has already been a little reticent to do is have a K-8 in general when they've had a middle school. So the two things that I worry about is that 9.6 million, I believe was the number, give or take, and that's going to be enough to do what we need to do at that school because everything is interconnected by walkways. And so we need a full-on safe and secure building that's completely confined for that age group, as well as speaking with the mayor, et cetera, and Pooler, the projections for population size over the next 10 years are supposed to be something astronomical. So I worry a lot that if we just plan to use Pooler Elementary as the only pre-K to 2 or to 1, that we are going to be doing the same thing again in potentially 3 to 5 years. And, I like the idea of everyone from the same community being in the same pre-K to first grade, but, what are we going to do if it doesn't work? We don't have the money to do it and to do it right. And then where are we going to put these kids when they start, overpopulating schools again, like has been at New Hampstead the whole time? So it will be good to hear from people.
Okay, I think, you have your hand raised? Yes, come on up.
The map that you see for West Chatham Middle School, well, it includes Pooler. Currently, Pooler Elementary feeds into West Chatham Middle School. So that's why it appears that way. West Chatham Elementary and Pooler Elementary boundaries are closely together, but the Pine Barren piece, those students will still continue to go to West Chatham Elementary and West Chatham Middle School.
Okay, it's the new Bloomingdale map that I was.
Yes, on the Bloomingdale map, the Pooler area currently goes to West Chatham Middle School at this time. So once we combine the two attendance boundaries, Pooler pre-K through first will go to Pooler Early Learning Center, and then the 6th through 8th will be phasing in. But until that time, we will still have to provide transportation to both locations.
All right. Okay. All right, thank you so much. Of course, we went over a little bit, so I'm going to announce now that our regular board meeting will begin at 2:30 instead of 2. Okay? But first, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session. It's been moved and seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Thank you.